Hello and welcome back to Ekcel Academy's YouTube channel. Like all of you are aware, the CSEET exam is the new entrance exam for the CS course. It has replaced the existing CS foundation. And the CSEET exam has 4 papers. The first paper is business communication. Second is legal aptitude and logical reasoning. Third paper is economics and business environment. And fourth paper is current affairs, presentation and communication skills. And in communication skills, it is an oral exam, very commonly called viva voce. All these papers are for 50 marks. And in this video, we would be discussing the syllabus overview of economics and business environment. The marks allocation for paper number 3 is 50. That's the maximum marks. And of course, paper 3 consists of economics and business environment. And the number of questions that we can expect is 35. So it means that in business environment and economics paper, we will get 35 questions, and the maximum marks for which the exam is conducted is 50. This is paper 3 economics and business environment syllabus for us. So let us take one by one and let us understand each and every chapter. Now, even before we get into the chapter, let us understand the objective of this entire course. The objective is given to us here to test the understanding on concepts of micro and macroeconomics, and the focus is on Indian economic system. So in the first part, we will focus on microeconomics as well as the macroeconomics. We know they are the two important components of economics, and the focus is on the Indian economic system. And the second objective of this paper is to understand on various crucial elements of business environment. So business environment is something which we would have got introduced to in class 12. So here we go a little deeper and we will have a little more understanding on this subject. Now, as informed earlier, this paper is for 50 marks. And you can expect 25 marks questions from economics, and the remaining 25 marks questions will appear from business environment. Now let us start with the chapters. The first chapter that we have is basics of demand, supply and forms of market competition. So this is the microeconomics part. And here we study the theory of demand and supply and the equilibrium, followed by the elasticity of demand and supply, which is very, very interesting. And we will get to know a lot of things about the nature of demand and supply. Then we will study the increase, decrease in demand and change in the equilibrium, along with expansion and contraction of demand. If you were an economic student in class 11 and 12, all these concepts are mostly like revision to you. Very, very simple, very, very interesting. And in the last part of chapter number 1, we will be studying the different types of markets and market competition. We have the perfect as well as the imperfect competition, and we'll be studying it. So basically, microeconomics is covered in chapter number 1. In chapter number 2, we move on to national income accounting related concepts. So it is a macroeconomics related chapter. This is very interesting, informative, and we will get to know a lot of things that we read in the newspapers, listen in the news channels. This chapter focuses on GNP, GDP, NNP, NDP, per capita income, personal income. All these topics are covered in the second chapter. It is one of the most engaging chapters that you have, very interesting, and more importantly, it is very relevant to our day-to-day life. Then we move on to the Indian Union budget. Budget is presented by the state governments as well as the central governments. So here the focus is on the union budget, that is the budget that is presented by the central government. So we start with the key terminologies. Unless and until we have clear understanding of the terms that are used in the budget, we will not be able to understand the budget as well as the chapter. So it is more or less like a glossary, which is very interesting. Then we study about different types of budget, the revenue budget and the capital budget. Then we also shed light on the major components in the revenue and the capital budget. Then we discuss fiscal budget. Fiscal deficit is something which is very important, and every student who is studying either commerce or business or management should know what exactly is fiscal deficit and why is it so very important to make sure that the fiscal deficit is on the lower side. So we will be learning even the fiscal budget. Then we have the various variables and components that are a part of the fiscal budget, and with that we conclude chapter number 3. Again, a very relevant chapter for us. It will help us to understand the functioning of the finance ministry of the country. Then we move on to the Indian financial markets. Here we study about the financial institutions. An overview is given to us. Then we see the key facets of the Indian financial system. Then we move on to financial institutions, which is very important for us to know. We know about RBI, we know about the commercial banks, we have something to do with SIDBI and other financial corporations which are very important. We will shed light on those things. Then we will have a brief discussion on the public and the private banks. Then we will discuss the industrial finance. Then we go to the regional rural banks. Even to this day, India lives in the villages. So it is very important to nurture and develop the rural economy. So regional rural banks play an important role. Then cooperative banks, they are also an important organ in the financial system of the country. Then we have a note on the NBFCs. They are the non-banking financial corporations. Even that is studies. Then we come to one of the most interesting parts of this chapter, where we study about different types of shares and debentures. We all know Indian corporate is becoming bigger and bigger each passing day. So in this expanding corporate world of India, there is requirement for huge capital to flow in. So how would they get their required capital, and how shares and debentures can become the important financial vehicles for them to get the capital that they are looking for, is what we study in this part. And finally, we will read about the small and medium enterprises, very popularly called MSMEs, and we will also have a discussion on startup in the 4th chapter of economics. And then we move on to the Indian economy, which is very, very important. So here we focus on agriculture and allied practices, manufacturing and services. The three main pillars of any economy across the world are agriculture, manufacturing and services. So we will study these three aspects from Indian point of view. Then we have the current scenario, then we have the agricultural and industrial policy, then scenarios in the service sector of India. Service sector is the largest sector in modern India. 55% of our GDP comes from services, so it is important for us to know how exactly the services sector functions and the composition of the services sector. Then we have the BOP, that is the balance of payment. Then we will read the components of BOP. Then we also study about BOT, that is balance of trade, and we also shed light on what is favorable BOT and what is unfavorable BOT. Then we go on to the foreign investment, which can flow in three ways: FDI, FII and FPI. So these are the three important ways in which foreign investment flows: FDI, FII and FPI. So we'll be studying even about that in the last part of this chapter. So with this, we conclude the economics part of paper 3. So what are we left with? We have paper 4, and paper 4 is on business environment. So what do we have in business environment? So in business environment, we start with the entrepreneurship scenario, which is one of the hot topics in India today. India is one of the countries in the world which has a lot many entrepreneurs and startups. So here we study about the government's initiatives to foster an entrepreneurship, very important. Then the need for entrepreneurship in India, and then we will study the bottlenecks, the limitations or the problems or the challenges that the startups face in India. Here we also come across something called the ease of doing business index. Ease of doing business index, very very important, and India is ranked in the 63rd position out of almost 200 countries. So how did India achieve this kind of a feat is what we discuss in this chapter. Then we move on to the core of business environment, which is very very interesting. We study the features of the business environment and the factors which influence the business environment. Then comes the type. We have something called the internal and external, and in external we have something called micro and macro. So the entire business environment chart is studied by us: internal environment, external environment, then we have the micro, then we have the macro environment. So, and the under these, the different types that come are also studied in this part. Very interesting, and this will give us a glimpse the way in which businesses operate in the real world. Then we also have something about the World Bank and development promotion industry, internal trade for states. All these things are covered in this chapter. Paper 3 concludes with key government institutions, which is very important. It is highly informative. We get a lot of facts and figures. So here we study about RBI, which all of us have heard. Then we have SEBI. After that, we have something called IBBI. Then we have CCI, Competition Commission of India. Then we move on to NCLT and NCLAT, right? National Companies Law Tribunal, National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, which is very important for every CS student to know. So even that is covered in the last chapter of business environment. So this is the composition, and these are the different topics that are covered in paper 3. So paper 3 altogether has got 8 chapters, out of which 5 are from economics and 3 are from business environment, and the maximum marks for which we write this exam is 50. If you want little more clarity, if you want more details on paper 3, you can leave your doubts and questions in the comment section. We shall come back to you with answers and clarification. We wish you all the very best for your preparation as well as for your exams. Thank you so much.